We've worked on identifying parallel and perpendicular slopes. Parallel have the same slope, and perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. And now we're going to talk about if I want a parallel or perpendicular line and need it to go through a certain point, how to write that equation. So our first step is to identify the original slope, and this is on the middle of your foldable. And sometimes to find my original slope, you have to solve for y. Your equation needs to be y equals blah, blah, blah. Then you're going to decide whether to do parallel or perpendicular based on the problem and use our formula from first quarter, y equals m x minus h plus k. So if I look at my first problem, I always want to start with identifying my original slope. Since my equation already has y by itself, I'm good to go. So y equals m, which is 3. Now, once I have my original slope, I don't need the original equation anymore, so I'm actually going to cross it out right now. So I want my parallel slope, and my parallel slope is going to be the same, so that's going to be 3. So now I have my m and my h and my k to use my old formula, y equals m x minus h plus k. So my m is 3. X, remember that the minus in my formula means opposite, so the opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. And then I keep k, so keep it as positive 1. Now we're going to distribute 3x plus 12 plus 1 and combine my like terms. 3x plus 13. This next problem is different because the y isn't by itself. So before I can identify the slope, I need to get y by itself. So I'm going to move my x term, and I get y equals negative 4x plus 8, and y is by itself now, so I can identify my slope. So my original slope is negative 4, and the problem is asking about my parallel slope, which would also be negative 4. Once I have my parallel slope, I can cross out my original information because I have the slope I need and the h and k from my point. So y equals m x minus h plus k. My m is negative 4, x minus in your formula means opposite, so the opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. And then I keep k, so keep it as a positive 5. Distribute. And then I combine like terms. So y equals negative 4x minus 19. Now we're going to do perpendicular. So I check and make sure y is by itself, which it is. So my original slope is 1/2, which means my perpendicular slope would be negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. Now that I have my perpendicular slope, I don't need my original equation. I have my new m, my h, and my k. Y equals m x minus h plus k. My new slope is negative 2. X minus means opposite, so the opposite of positive 3 is negative 3. And keep k as negative 1. Distribute negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6 minus 1. So y equals negative 2x plus 5. Once again, we have an equation already solved for y, so I can go ahead and identify my original slope is 3, and it's asking me to do perpendicular, so my perpendicular slope is negative. Don't forget that's really a 3 over 1, so when I do the reciprocal, it's going to be negative 1 over 3. Now I don't need my original information. I'm crossing that out because otherwise people start getting confused with the original y-intercept. It actually doesn't come into play at all in my life. Negative 1/3 x minus means opposite. The opposite of positive 6 is negative 6, and then we keep k. So y equals negative 1/3 x. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 1/3 of 6 is 2. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. So my final equation is just y equals negative 1/3 x. So far, all the equations we've looked at have had two variables. But what about when I have one variable? Back in the day, we used Hoivux to talk about things when they were one variable, and that still comes into play when I'm talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. If I start with one variable, then I'm going to end with one variable. So if I want parallel to x equals, that means I'm going to keep the same variable. So just like I have the same slope, to get the same slope, I need the same variable with the same letter. So x equals, because it's parallel, and then what's the x value they give me? -6. So my equation is x equals -6. When we have one variable, these should be super quick because you aren't doing any computation whatsoever. The next one wants me to do perpendicular to an x equals equation. So perpendicular means you do the opposite variable. So instead of x, it's going to be y. And if I look at my points, what's my y value in the point they gave me? 1. Don't do any calculation. Don't try squishing stuff together. You're just writing the y value they gave you. So if I have perpendicular to y equals, perpendicular is going to be the opposite variable. So x equals, and the x value they gave me is -2. Parallel to y equals 5. Parallel means the same variable. So that's going to be y. And then the y value that they give you is 4. So at the bottom it says parallel. So I want you to say parallel means the same variable, and perpendicular means the other variable. Perpendicular is the opposite variable or other variable, however you want to say that.